there guys, it's Kaioshin Curt here, helping you to expand and enhance your knowledge of Dragon Ball. And in this video, we're going to be going on a tour of Kami's Lookout. I'm really excited for this one, guys. So firstly, guys, if you can leave 50 likes on this video, that would be awesome. Thank you very much. I continually thank you for your support. Thanks for that. And with this one, guys, this is probably one of my most enjoyable videos yet for me because I really love Kami's Lookout, and I'm hoping you guys are going to appreciate this. Now, when I say this is like a kind of a tour of Kami's Lookout, it was a little bit difficult to kind of piece this together. So I'm not going to call it like a proper tour where we go room by room. Oh yes, you go in the main entrance, then it's this room, then it's this room. Because really, if you look at the manga and the anime, you can't really pinpoint that. But in Dragon Ball Z, it got a lot more clear where things were, such as the Hyperbolic Time Chamber and all that kind of stuff. But we're going to go through chronologically, starting from when we first saw Kami's Lookout in Dragon Ball. So this was in episode 124 of Dragon Ball, and this was actually when Goku went to see Karin or Korin in the English dub, and he was asking him about how he can revive his friends after he killed Demon King Piccolo. And Karin actually says, right, you should go and see God. And he tells him how to get there. So he has to put his Noibo, he has to put it in the top of Karin's tower and extend it. And he has to go all the way up to Kami's Lookout, or the Sanctuary as it's called in the manga according to Viz. So he does that, and you get up there, and it's essentially this huge tower, this huge this palace almost, like this, this lookout, and it's a lot bigger than Karin's tower, of course. But it's like this, the top bit's got this very large, extended tiled area. It's got flower beds and palm trees and all this, and obviously maintained by Kami's steward, Mr. Popo, or now Dende's steward. And it's got the palace there with all the buildings, the towers and the wings coming off it as well. And this is probably quite a familiar scene, because in Dragon Ball Z, Kami's Lookout became quite a base for lots of the scenes, really, for all the characters. It moved away from Kame House and was all up on the lookout. And we saw that in actually Dragon Ball episode 127 to 130, we got a lot more kind of info on what sort of rooms and what's in the actual lookout. This wasn't actually in the manga. All these episodes are actually filler, so anime only. So just because I noticed that there was a gap between Goku training on Kami's Lookout and then the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai. But in the anime, we actually saw him training with Mr. Popo, going through all these kinds of things. So in episode 127, Mr. Popo took him to this room which had a teleporter, and this teleporter was apparently what Kami could use to go anywhere at any time. And Goku was transported somewhere for some training and that kind of thing. And when he'd actually come back from that training in episode 128, he was battered, he got struck by lightning, and he was out for 3 days asleep in a room next to where the teleporter was. So there's 2 rooms we have already. And then in episode 128, we got introduced to another room where Mr. Popo brought about another kind of training. And this was called in the Room of Time. And this was a room with all these little clocks on the walls and on the ceiling and all that kind of stuff. And this was a room where you could actually go into the past or the future to go to a different time period and train. Now, Mr. Popo initially made this happen by setting the clock on the wall, and then a portal would appear and you have to go into it. And Goku went in there to go back in time to see Kame Sennin's master. And at this point, I really should mention that this same room actually came into Dragon Ball Z. Not in the manga, of course, but in anime. It was in episode 17, I believe, that the Z fighters, in preparation for actually, the Saiyans coming, Nappa and Vegeta, they actually went to train in Kami's Lookout, and they went into this same room of time. But at first, it wasn't as easily recognizable as it was in Dragon Ball, because it seemed the room was completely remodeled for that Dragon Ball Z episode. Instead of all the clocks on the walls, it just had this central pendulum swinging. But it still served the same purpose. They could go into the past or future to train. And of course, they went off and trained in the past with some less powerful Saiyans than Nappa and Vegeta. And then finally, if we go back to Dragon Ball, the last one I've seen is in episode 130, when Mr. Popo actually seeks to make a training partner for Goku that's very similar to himself. You know, it actually has the exact same power level and all this kind of stuff and techniques. And he makes this being in a little workshop room, what I call a workshop room, kind of like a little shed room. You know, we've got all the supplies and all these kinds of things, you know, gardening tools and all this kind of stuff. So there's obviously Mr. Popo has some kind of workshop or gardening room where he has all his supplies for that kind of stuff. So all these rooms in Dragon Ball are really difficult to, it's really difficult to ascertain where they were in the lookout. And for some of the other rooms in Dragon Ball Z that we saw, that was similar, but we'll be getting into soon the rooms that we can quite more easily ascertain where they were. But once again, guys, I go back to the Garlic Jr. saga for this, and this was obviously anime only, it's not really in the manga canon, but we do see in episode 108, that Garlic Jr. and his henchmen, once they've apprehended Mr. Popo and Kami, they go into this room, which is apparently where Garlic Jr.'s father, actually hid the Aqua Mist, which is the mist they release and turns, kind of magnifies the evils in everyone's heart and turns them into demon clansmen. They release that mist, but they find the Aqua Mist in this little bottle in this room. And that room kind of looked like another workshop room, kind of like what Mr. Popo had, but maybe it was filled with more interesting and unique items that the lookout actually holds. And that's something that really interests me. You know, what other kinds of things have they got in there? And actually, when we get into episode 112, we see that this is actually really interesting, right? We see that the actual palace on Kami's lookout has many different levels. It's a very multi-leveled building, and essentially it's got lots of chambers and lots of levels you can go up and down. This was actually in the fight between the henchman and Garlic Jr. himself with, you know, Piccolo, Gohan and Krillin. They were going through walls everywhere, they were going up and down. The whole place, you know, has loads and loads of chambers and walls and levels. It looks as though you can descend down into the actual lookout and the base underneath the tiled floor from the actual palace building. You can go down many levels and then back up again or whatever you want. Now this was probably one of the more interesting places in the lookout, and this was actually in episodes 114 and 15 of Dragon Ball Z in the Garlic Jr. saga. I've dealt with this in a previous video which I can link for you guys. This was about the previous Kamis of the Earth. So this was when Mr. Popo and Kami actually went down into what is called the Shinsenkai, which is the burial grounds for all the previous Kami. And this was a place that Kami-sama himself was not allowed to go. And when he went there, that's why all the Guardians and the previous Kamis were on him and trying to torture him, because he's not allowed to go there. But they had to go there to put the holy water into the 7 air currents of the world, which is right at the bottom of the lookout. So they had to get there, and so they had to descend through all these levels and go through this forbidden place to get there. But that's one of the more interesting places in the lookout, the Shinsenkai, where the previous Kamis of the Earth are buried. Now I know, guys, what you might be thinking at this stage of the video. You're thinking, hang on, has he forgot about the Room of Spirit and Time, the Hyperbolic Time Chamber? Well, no, I haven't. So in actual fact, Chapter 366 of the manga, and in episode 147, this was when Vegeta and Trunks, or Future Trunks, actually go into the Room of Spirit and Time to do their training. So this was one of the times where we could actually pinpoint exactly where in the lookout this Hyperbolic Time Chamber, Room of Spirit Time was. So it appears to be on one of the wings of the lookout, the palace there, because they actually walk around the outside of the lookout to get to it. And it appears to be the door to the Hyperbolic Time Chamber is on one of the domes, one of the domes out there, and it's not clear exactly which one it is, but it's one of them. So you actually go into the Room of Spirit and Time from the outside of the lookout. You don't go inside the lookout and then it's, you know, in there somewhere. It's actually on the outside of the lookout, and I can tell that because there's blue sky all around this frame. So you can tell that it's outside. So that's quite interesting. And also in episode 242, we see that Goten and Trunks were actually sleeping in a room that was on the bottom floor of one of these domes. And later on, actually in the Buu arc, we also saw that some of the gang, you know, Chi-Chi, Ox King, Bulma, Krillin, Videl, all them, they're actually just in one of the viewing ports at the top of one of these domes, just waiting for things to happen. You know, I think Boo was on his way up to the lookout and they didn't know, but they were just looking out and they were, you know, just chilling there. But they actually, the dome seems to have a room at the bottom, or multiple rooms up. We don't know about the multiple levels, but it seems to have one at the bottom, and then at the top there's like a viewing area where you can just kind of chill out. Of course, in episode 32 of Dragon Ball Super, the Room of Spirit and Time was also used again, but we really didn't see anything extra than we've ever seen before. We just saw, you know, Dende and Mr. Puppet playing tennis. But the last mention I'm gonna go into here was actually when Piccolo was actually escorting Super Boo to the Room of Spirit and Time to actually fight Gotenks. You know, Goten and Trunks are already then training to fight him, but Piccolo takes Super Boo on the long way round the lookout to get to the Hyperbolic Time Chamber, Room of Spirit and Time. This scene was interesting, but it was a little bit disappointing because they went through all different kinds of corridors, you know, spiral staircases, all these weird zigzag staircases up and down. But essentially, we don't really know where they were. You know, where were these staircases? Where did they lead? You know, obviously they descended down the lookout and then up again and down again, just for to, you know, just spend as much time as possible so that Goten and Trunks could keep on training and resting. So overall, guys, we have seen a lot of the lookout, to be fair, over, you know, Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. But I really would have liked to have seen more and more clearly know, like, a floor plan and all this kind of stuff. It's not really that important, but to me it's really important. I really love Kami's lookout, and I hope you guys do too. And I hope you guys, you know, this tour kind of really jogged your memory and inspired something, you know, kind of some knowledge and like willing to know the layout of Kami's lookout. You can research it for yourself. I've got all the references for you there. I hope it kind of impressed something upon you. But if you haven't already, guys, if you enjoyed it, please remember to leave a like and subscribe to start expanding and enhancing your knowledge of Dragon Ball. Sorry there's no quiz today, guys. It's not really necessary, but I'll see you in the next video.